Hi guys. Please do let me know if you can hear me. Do let me know if you can hear me. We are going to be doing more lives as I promised you guys, and so please do let me know if you hear me, okay? Yeah. Come up guys, please. Let's try to do some thinking tonight. Let's try to think. Let's try to do some thinking tonight, all right? So come up everyone, come up. Let's try to do some thinking. I'm just gonna wait for a few people to come online and then we'll start. I'm gonna wait for a few people to join and then we start. Yes, thank you so much, Melody van der Berg. Welcome, welcome. I'm gonna wait for a few more people to come in. As you come in, do let me know so I call your name and salute you. Ella Quetza, loud and clear. Thank you so much. That's so nice. Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. Welcome, guys. I hope you guys had a nice day. Yeah, it's been an interesting day for me anyway. Yeah, I'm just gonna wait. I'm just gonna wait a little. Just gonna wait a little so we think. Let's think. We really have to think about, you know, the things going on right now with the whole issue around South African media, South African politicians and all of that. So we really have to think. Oh, Stan Farren, you had a good. You had a great day. That's good. That's good. That's good. I like that. I like that. For me, the days are so fast. I don't really know how they go so fast. Probably because I'm so busy. So busy. Yeah, lightning rat. Thank you. Welcome, welcome. We'll just wait a little bit. Share thoughts. Let's share thoughts together. Yes, Kietsvid. I just finished your previous video. Did you get any backpack? Yes, I got my backpack back. Yes, thank you. Wow, such caring question. Yeah, I had to go 10 kilometers. I had to go 10 kilometers, back and forth to go get my back and my bag. So, yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah. Took a lot of time though. I should have used that time to do something. I have a book to read. I have a really thick book. It's about I'm trying to really understand the Nigerian civil war, the one I've been telling you guys about, the Biafra War. So we'll be doing a series of documentaries, and so that was a book by one of our former presidents in Nigeria, Obasanjo. I think we'll be doing a little bit more of African history. Try to pull most of my audience. I know most of my audience are whites and coloreds and some non-South Africans, but also some black South Africans as well. So soon we're going to be doing a much more comprehensive reading of Africa, through history, to try to really get us at par to understand as we try to analyze South Africa. We'll still try to understand the position of South Africa in the Committee of Nations. Piet Scared Vids asks, where do you stay? I shuttle to Scandinavia. You could see me as a black Scandinavian, as probably some of you might identify as white South African. So I'm also Nigerian originally, but I also studied in the Scandinavia. So I have a master's and PhD from Finland, and I have a kind of like what we call a postdoctoral kind of like work research going on around now in the Scandinavia. So I do African research, do field work around Africa as well, and then moving around. So that's kind of like my job in the humanities, social science research. Yeah. So I will just wait a little bit more to have some of you guys around. and then we begin the few analysis we'll be doing today. I'll be sort of like asking your pardon for I've not yet been able to I think I need some funds to get this ad-free YouTube account. I hear that there's a kind of account on YouTube where the ads don't come up, so I need to get that kind of account. I think it costs some money. I have to do some research anyway. But for now, I'll be doing some video. I'll be playing some videos from YouTube, so we just think collectively. And in the middle, sometimes there might be ads, so I'm begging your pardon in advance. I'll edit them as soon as the videos are done. I'm going to be editing them out. So whenever there's an ad playing, please be patient with me as I try to get that account, that ad-free account. Yeah, but I know most of you don't mind because it feels like I'm speaking to my family as well, and so we're just chill. But anyway, I don't compromise excellence. For me, excellence is a language, and so we'll be working on that. So I think we are quite a number, so we could just begin. Just a few thoughts I thought to share about what has gone down now. So it's been a really heavy one for all sides. The whole media has gone crazy. I mean, like, it's just crazy everywhere. It's crazy. It's gone really like crazy on the media. The thing with the exchange between President Trump and President Ramaphosa, a lot of people have actually been giving a lot of different kinds of feedback, and so it's just really strange how the left and the right in the US are actually taking this thing. It's so intense in the US, even more intense than than in Africa, our own Africa, you see. And so so going forward anyway, one big question I'm asking is what do we look, what do we have to sort of, what's next? Because it appears that there are many things that have actually been discussed that don't still seem as though we arrived at a point where we could say, okay, these are the points that we now have to work with to ensure unity and harmony in South Africa. One of the interviews that really surprised me today was I stumbled on MBALULA. MBALULA was trying to articulate the speech between President Ramaphosa and President Trump. And some of the statements he was actually making, I was really shocked. I was expecting, and I'm still expecting anyway, probably it's because maybe it's still too early. But as a government official, for me, I would expect, a government official, for especially maybe like in the ANC or these guys, to be a little bit more, to have a little bit more empathy on what has been going on right now across the world, across South Africa, the cries, the pains, the letters that have been written by these guys who have been murdered, who have lost their family members and all that. I would expect some empathy, even if probably some policies won't be implemented in the moment. I remember President Trump asking President Ramaphosa that, why isn't this guy arrested? I think that was to Julius Malema or I don't know if it was Zuma. Like, he was arguing that in the United States, whoever makes that kind of statement, that kind of chant, for example, would be arrested. And by the way, guys, I heard today that 2 Israelis were shot, a couple, they were shot in I think it was not Washington, D.C. or so. So we see that we are still living in a really dark, difficult, dangerous world that still needs to heal. South Africa is not lost on that one. We see, that if things are not handled carefully, this trip, this discussion with Trump, I'm really hoping, I don't want to feel as though it's not going to lead to any tangible thing, but if we are not careful, because one thing I've been asking myself is, okay, now where we seem to have achieved some kind of peace or some kind of, appeasement by Trump and Ramaphosa. Is Trump going to cancel the refugee program now? Is there going to be a continuous uprooting of President Ramaphosa's citizens to the U.S. now that we seem to have found would it be a point of agreement? Would they stop? Would that refugee program stop? I don't know. Because these are the questions we should be asking. I think I stumbled on the Colonel Chris Wyatt's page, and most of his analysis are still along the lines of President Ramaphosa got a whooping. President Ramaphosa got, was slammed, that kind of thing. And I was just taken aback and really wondering if that's the kind of discussion we really need now. Because the kind of discussion we really need at this moment should be beyond if President Ramaphosa got slammed or ambushed or not. All right. We are speaking about people who are crying for justice. All right. We are speaking about those people. And however the discussion should go, it should actually go in those lines and not necessarily on if President Ramaphosa was ambushed or not. There are still people who, those letters President Trump actually handed over to President Ramaphosa, I know many people might doubt that those letters are real anyway. But there are still people who are really nurturing pain. Okay, probably not just in the white community. I know many people in the black community as well have gone through a lot, even in the colored community. I remember when Gaten McKenzie came out to confront a police officer who shot Chesney, I think that was her name, who came out and shot the lady because I think it was his girlfriend or something like that, But I don't know what went down and what happened, but. Remember when at the end of the day, he actually shot the lady. Sorry for that, guy. He actually got to shoot the lady. And so there's a lot of healing that needs to go on in the land. And so our discussion should go beyond whether one president was slammed or whether one president was corrected and all of that. So one big question now I'm really beginning to ask myself is, when I listen to this interview by MBALULA, I'm going to be playing it now. He seems to, I don't know, I would have expected a kind of remorse, a kind of, or maybe this is not the right time. I don't know how these guys are processing this. But I thought that there would be some kind of remorse to those who have lost their lives, families and all that. Even to the point where it's quite a really... I don't want to use annoying, but it's kind of like it's still an interview that still goes along those lines of like, is this still happening in this country? And, when President Ramaphosa was shown the video of those crosses and he asked if that was, he didn't know where that was. And, probably that was even South Africa. I don't know. But Trump says that, Trump immediately replied that was South Africa. So these kinds of things still seem to be at the level where this discussion is. And I really felt taken aback, at the kind of like, I don't want to say it's a lack of empathy, but that kind of reaction in this interview. So I'll be playing the interview now, and it might get some of you offended anyway, but I think it's really important to really hear and understand how the ANC is processing this. I think there was a point where MBALULA actually goes on to praise Johan Rupert and actually argue that Gary Player, who I usually thought that Gary Player was a good friend to Trump, but anyway, MBALULA's interpretation of that friendship is that Gary Player doesn't really say good things about South Africa. Bro, that one took me aback, like, whoa, really? But anyway, these are kind of the issues I think that we have to really sit down and talk about and think about carefully to really understand where the country is going and how to position ourselves, black, whites, Indian, coloreds, on the evolution of events going on in South Africa. So I'll just quickly begin without wasting so much time. We'll just begin with this interview here. And pardon me, guys, if there are ads that you really offend you, I'll skip them quick, but then edit them at the end.
Mr. MBALULA, just the essence of that particular meeting, how as the ANC viewed that particular engagement with President Trump, particularly after that ambush of those falsified claims of white genocide in South Africa?
Thank you very much, Samkelo. I think we may want to characterize yesterday as mission accomplished because many things have been said about South Africa. It took the head of state to go to White House to sit down with President Trump and to put the record straight for the first time face to face. And President must be applauded for that. He's doing it for his country. He's not doing it for himself. To protect the interests of South Africans. And let's see what get out of it. And we're looking forward to a scenario where in which nothing can be said about us outside the proper channels. And I think yesterday resetting the button meant that the diplomatic channels, the proper channels of engaging, will actually be opened up from yesterday. So it's a great achievement for South Africa. And the president took, and his government took a right decision, which we as the ANC supported right from the outset.
When you look at what transpired yesterday, particularly with the falsified claims of white genocide within the country, shouldn't the president have had the stats pocket in hand of the actual crime stats within the country?
Yeah, and so you see, this is one area I think in South African media, the way it's usually been argued that the falsified claims of white genocide. I don't know if the discussion should be still around the fact that the claims are falsified or not. I think there should be a consideration of those who have actually come out to the fore to argue that their family members, friends have lost their lives. Some have bullet wounds, some have been tortured and all of that. Really horrible stories. Rather than this focus on whether the claims were falsified or not. I know probably the country would have to clean its name as one that would enter the history as being a nation that actually commits genocide. All right, I understand that perfectly, and that term genocide, has actually been deconstructed by many sources, so to speak. All right, but I truly would understand where the government is going with that. But for me, I would expect the media in South Africa to kind of like have a little bit more reservation for the fact that, yes, there's an identification of, some families that actually have gone through some very bitter experiences and all of that. Acknowledge that, probably have a little bit more empathy. But this forceful, designation of the fact that there's a falsified narrative of genocide in South Africa, even with all the videos we watched yesterday, to the point where I left my bag on the bus, I dropped down because I was so lost in my thoughts, and having that kind of like lack of empathy. That's, for me, it was really problematic. But let's just continue.
The issue about yesterday, Samkela, was not really about going head to head with President Trump about the falsified thing, because it is falsified, was to understand, which we now understood, what is basing his falsification on. First, it was unsubstantiated. Those clips about the leader of the opposition and 5 years memory of white Afrikaners or farmers marching alongside the road and with.
So these guys didn't have any YouTube videos, YouTube channels. They didn't have a social media following.
On the side, saying that this signifies death of white farmers. That showed that the president of the United States was out of depth. He should have brought something to the fore. Secondly,
okay, guys, please, let's just pause now a bit. I really need clarity now from, especially those of you in the chat. Please help us understand. Those crosses, for example, were there like an exhibition? Were they like sort of like something that was just taken as a video to show some kind of solidarity to those who are they really actually people who lost their lives. Please help us understand. If you're in the chats, please help us understand, because from MBALULA's statement now, what I'm listening, it actually appears as though that clip was used as a way to justify, you know, this whole narrative of a fact that there's a genocide, as if the clip sort of like represented something that was used to allegedly state a fact. So we need you guys now to really help us understand if that clip was, you know, an actual clip showing those who have lost their lives going forward, with all these farm killings and all that. We really need to understand that, because I don't know if I'm really understanding MBALULA clearly. So I'm just going to take that portion of the video back a little bit and try to really listen carefully.
Those clips about the leader of the opposition and 5 years memory of white Afrikaners or farmers marching alongside the road and with on the side, saying that this signifies death of white farmers. That showed that the president of the United States was out of depth. He should have brought something to the fore. Secondly, for him to confuse crime to genocide, it's again absurd, because genocide is a political terminology. That means South Africa has got an agenda to extricate or to annihilate a particular race. Then you call it a political genocide, or you call it a genocide. It's a political term. So for him to use that terminology again, it's absurd. So I think all of us would have seen yesterday claims made by AfriForum, started by them, amplified by them, but also President Trump told us that there are people who are bad-mouthing us, who are very close to him, who are his friends, who are basically white in color. They complain about our laws. They complain about a whole range of other issues that they talk about. And yet, Rupert on the other side said that there is crime. And that crime is black and white. It is not white. White farmers will be affected because they control the land. If you talk about commercial farming in South Africa, is led by white farmers. And if crime statistics in the farms, as long as I was Minister of Police, I went to address them, intensified security arrangement in the farms and all of that, it affects them. And then, but it is across the color line. And that is it. And where perpetrators have been found, many of them have actually been sent to jail. Maybe those statistics were supposed to be counterposed with how many people have been arrested for those crimes. You are right there. But we didn't go the way I understood the president to argue a case, because he knew that that is not true. And it was upon President Trump to justify. Where does this thing come from? We know where does it come from. It is from nowhere. It is just been verbosed, unsubstantiated.
Those friends of President Trump, could it be those whom he asked the president to bring along with him, particularly the golfers? Some of them have been out of the country for quite some time. Some may still be in. They may not be pleased with what's happening in the country. Do you think a person like Ernie Els, Gary Player, and others could badmouth South Africa to President Trump, knowing the close proximity they have towards him, and those are his outright spoken friends that he spoke about, saying that he wants them to come along and he's got a good relationship with them?
Well, I know that Gary Player doesn't talk good about us to President Trump. I know that for a fact. I'm not saying it's the president who's saying that, it's Fikile MBALULA who's saying so. And I'm getting it on good vibes. That Gary Player...
Guys, I really hope you guys would You guys would have to really direct Gary Player to this one to really understand. But I don't know personally, the kind of discussions Gary Player might be having with President Trump. But the few things I've actually learned about him has actually been, the assistance he has given to. I think he built some villages or some homes for some black people in South Africa. And, in the last video I made on this channel, he spoke about the investments he has built, the schools he has built for black kids and all of that in South Africa going forward. And I really don't understand the angle from which MBALULA thinks that maybe Gary Player has been speaking bad about South Africa. Maybe he speaks bad about South Africa in the fact that he easily points out what really aren't working. And that's where I usually find a really dividing line in this. How maybe sometimes when you speak about a fact, that fact could actually start sounding as though you are speaking negative about the country or the people. So especially on this channel, and I actually heard Kebaso, the guy who is a host of the 360 Experience, today in one of his videos, he was arguing how difficult it is to really host a kind of channel he hosts. Because when you call out things for what they really are, you seem to be someone who speaks bad about the country. And so it's difficult to draw the line. So now I'm really wondering if probably this is the line now that MBALULA is trying to really deconstruct for, Gary Player, arguing that Gary Player doesn't speak well about South Africa. And maybe Gary Player, I think from the last video I had anyway, most of his anger has been about the breakage, that things how going south in South Africa and all of that. But then to really see that as speaking bad about South Africa, I really don't know how to place that. But anyway, I thought that was a really interesting one. Let's quickly round up this video.
Player doesn't talk good about us. Any else and everyone else, they love this country. Like everyone else, they are concerned about crime, but at least they had the guts to come along. And when they were invited to speak and all of that, and to me they didn't do a bad job, but equally.
Did you know that you can call your soulmate into your life right now?
Oh my.
Here's how. This is the soulmate.
Guys.
They will be at the same level as Johan Rupert. It was good for the president to bring people who don't only come from the political fold. If it was me, it will be taken that no, it's ANC, their own weaknesses and all of that. But we as South Africans, we could see yesterday there are people who love this country, patriots.
Yeah, and those patriots were Johan Rupert. So according to him, Johan Rupert argued that instead of calling what is actually happening in South Africa a genocide of the farmers or a white genocide, that Johan Rupert argued that what was happening in South Africa is crime that actually affects both black and white in South Africa. And because of that, Johan Rupert is a patriot, that he didn't castigate the country and he didn't speak negative about the country and all of that. So I don't really know what you guys think about that, but for me, that's a really interesting one. So this next video anyway, I thought it was really interesting because right now, this lady here, I think she's the former American ambassador to the US. And she's, in fact, from this interview, she actually negates everything MBALULA has been saying. She actually says that she thinks that there's a genocide in South Africa. She thinks that, white farmers are persecuted and really, murdered in South Africa. And, the things she had to say, bro, for me, they were really, for watching it on American TV as a US person, I think they were really kind of like off the hook. But anyway, let's quickly.
Under Donald Trump. Ambassador Lana Marks, it's great to have you on this evening. The South African president denied that white farmers are being slaughtered in South Africa. We think that's a lie. What can you tell us about what's really going on there?
There is a very dire situation which President Donald Trump articulated so brilliantly today, and by giving visuals of the facts, it was incontrovertible. It's a dire problem. It cannot be denied.
The media here, so our own U.S. media, claim that none of this is going on. These are some recent headlines. False claims from the New York Times, ABC also saying false claims, CNN today, a debunked conspiracy theory that white South African farmers are being killed. Take a look at this video and tell me if this looks like a false claim, Ambassador.
There's nothing you can do, there's nothing this parliament can do. With or without you, people are going to occupy land. We require no permission from you, from the president, from no one. We don't care, we can do whatever you want to do. Who are you to tell us whether we can occupy land or not? We are going to occupy land. Yes. South African occupy land. Must not.
You ever seen anything like what we witnessed in the Oval Office today?
It was pretty darn shocking and must terrify the wits out of these poor Afrikaans farmers.
What needs to change, in your opinion, in South Africa? 35 years ago, apartheid ended. Now members of the government there are calling for the murder of people who have lived in South Africa for more than 400 years.
When I went there as President Donald Trump's ambassador, biggest honor of my life, in 2019, I said to President Ramaphosa, please do not touch the land laws. President Trump is watching this closely. We want to increase investment with your country. So he did nothing. He didn't touch the land laws at that time. But then I left in 21, and for 4 years all hell broke loose, and who knows who they thought was going to be in power now. But the thing is that they cannot put land laws like this in place, because if you get the wrong person in power and going forward, there could be an absolute bloodbath. President Trump is being kind in issuing refugee status to people who are in dire straits at the moment. And it could increase, and the situation could get a lot worse. President Trump is articulating to South Africa, the situation is off the rails. Get your country back on the rails, get back on track. I think he's actually been very kind to them. He was incredibly kind and patient to President Ramaphosa in the Oval Office today.
Madam Ambassador, yes or no, and I just asked because I promised the audience, yes or no, are white South African farmers being slaughtered in South Africa at this time?
Yes.
Okay. Ambassador Marks,
wow.
I'll have you back on. Thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Thank you for the honor. Thank you.
Wow, guys. So did you guys hear that? That was a really interesting way to end that video. So I think if I'm listening to her correctly, and for me this is really new, because there's a possibility of passing a law. A president can pass a certain kind of law today that he might not, drive to its full logical conclusions. But then the ambassador now is arguing that, a law might be passed, but the next person who comes into power could then, weaponize that law and have much more disastrous consequences. And so this is the American argument on how she sees, the Expropriation Act, for example, and its dark sides. And I think probably that's a really interesting way to see it. So rather than even passing the law at all, better not to pass the law. But then from the majority side anyway, there could be argument as well. I think I was sending it also in the channel, on the chat today, that, I don't know if probably there has to be a smarter way to go about this whole thing about redressing the historical injustices of the past. For me, the most important redress that South Africa would ever need would be the training of the black majority. The black majority now needs extensive and excessive training, business development, skills development training, and all of that. Because when they are empowered, all right, if they are really empowered, I think when we see healthy competition going on, and all of that, I think that probably that would be a really smarter way of this redress, rather than, carrying out laws that will cause pain for one to satisfy the other. And at the end of the day, we're not really sure if the one who is supposed to be satisfied is truly satisfied. All right. So these are kind of like stories for other days. But anyway, I now found this final video anyway. I think this was a really interesting one. I really even want to listen again, because I think this guy is part of the 49 refugees who left South Africa, and he's actually now settling in the US, breaking down why and how it is that he came to the conclusion to depart or to run away from South Africa. And I think one part of the video that really struck me so much was when they asked him if he would consider coming back to South Africa. His response, bro, wasn't something really good. I mean, like, that response, you could feel he had gone through a lot of trauma in the land and all of that. And whenever he thinks of South Africa, it's a bittersweet one, because he feels that South Africa is his home. It's the only place he can really call home, his soil. In Nigeria, we usually speak about how one's intestine is buried in the soil. He thinks that his intestines are buried in the soil of South Africa. But when he thinks about, the trauma that he and his family had to go through, thinking of going back to South Africa then becomes a trauma. Let's just quickly listen to the guy.
Over 100,000 in fiscal year 2024, and we never heard complaints from Senator Kane. We never heard complaints from Democrats. We only heard complaints when last week a group of 59 South African refugees arrived on U.S. soil. Why? What does it not just reveal about the problems in South Africa, but the problems here at home with the Democrat Party in the United States? One of those 59 refugees from South Africa was Alexander Bolter, and he joins me now. Alexander, thanks for being with us, and welcome to the United States. I would love to ask you, as you listen to some of the sound we played today from the Oval Office, what is your reaction to the President of South Africa?
I think he did a very bad job today. I think President Trump was ready with the receipts. I think he could have brought a bit more. I think specifically talking about how Julius Malema, how he not only has not done anything against him, but he's also openly said that he endorses Malema, that he is ANC at heart, that he wants Julius Malema back into the ANC. So he's not only not said anything against him, he's come out in support of him.
And
he's also made mention.
Go ahead.
Sorry. He's also made mention, and I wish that President Trump had also showed this, that he will boil the Afrikaners like a frog.
Whoa.
So it's not just that he doesn't know what's going on or that he doesn't understand. He knows what's going on. He's doing this intentionally.
So Julius Malema, for anyone listening.
Guys, please help us understand this thing about boiling the Afrikaners like a frog. I mean, where is that coming from? Do we have documents backing that up? Do we have evidence? Please help us, guys, understand, because that's a really interesting one. I'm hearing almost. I've seen the comments a lot on this channel, but anyway, it's difficult to understand where that's coming from. But let's quickly listen to this guy's story.
He is the opposition party in South Africa. He was dismissed this afternoon as a small political minority. He has outlandishly called for violence towards white farmers, the death, the murder of white farmers, and as you just shared with us as well, boiling white farmers like a frog. Let's learn about your personal experience, Alexander. What happened with you and your family in South Africa?
Okay, well, I grew up on a farm, mostly. When I was very young, I wasn't on a farm, and then when I was around maybe 12, we moved to a farm until I was about 17. We left because of the attacks. You can't stay on a farm as a white person in South Africa. You know you'll be killed. And eventually my father said it's not worth it. We have to just flee. So he went over to Zambia, and we stayed in South Africa to try to get an education, finish things up. But I've been a victim of many attacks. When I was 7 years old, it's probably my youngest experience. I was hospitalized at the school. So I went to the bathroom and I was attacked by black students because they did not believe I should be there. So that was, I've been attacked many times after that as well, but it also goes to show even the children are indoctrinated into believing that white people are the enemy and that we are evil. And it's, right. I've never felt welcome in South Africa. I've always felt targeted.
You said that you knew, or your father knew, that staying on a farm in South Africa meant death, it meant murder. Tell me about that. Why is that such a presumption?
Well, it's common knowledge. You can talk to any farmer and they will tell you every single one of them knows multiple farmers who have been brutally executed, tortured to death, have their children tortured to death. It's the worst kinds of killings. And when politicians also sing songs about kill the farmer, kill the boer, you know they are targeting you. And you can talk to any farmer in South Africa, just ask them about the security measures they have in place, and you will be shocked. They're the most prepared people on earth for an attack, and they're still being slaughtered. So we know we are targeted. We know that you will be killed.
Now, Alexander, the South African president today almost dismissed your experience and what you've described to us as criminality. He said we don't stand for criminality, but it is criminality. But still, there are government policies, as mentioned by President Trump, that allow a population. First, there are politicians who inflame the population, as you pointed out, but there are also policies, are there not, that allow them to confiscate your farm?
Yes, expropriation without compensation was passed last year, somewhat illegally. It didn't go through the constitutional manner, and that allows for any property. It's not actually just land, like some people claim. It's property. They even specify that it's not land, so it can be a pension, it can be a house, it can be a car, it can be the clothes off your back. They can take it with nil compensation. Now, originally they tried to pass expropriation with zero compensation, and they said, no, that's unconstitutional. So they said, okay, we'll do it with nil compensation, and nil can be a form of compensation. Now, to me, nil means nothing, but the South African government disagrees. Another thing I'd like to add onto that, they say it is just crime. Okay, and South Africa has some of the worst crime in the world. That's a fact. But white farmers are 4 times more likely to be killed than the average person in South Africa. And bear in mind as well, every single white farmer in South Africa has enormous amounts of protection. They have barbed wire, electric fences, dogs, cameras, alarms, they've got radios, they've got groups patrolling, and they're still being slaughtered at enormous rates. So it's not just crime. You can't pretend it's just crime.
Well, last question for you, Alexander. Can you imagine at any point in your future, do you see the circumstances under which you will return to South Africa?
You see, it's very difficult, because I would obviously prefer not to have to leave South Africa. I prefer to be a South African, because that's where my forefathers lived. It's the country they built. But there's no hope for us. I don't believe they will ever try to fix things. I believe we've been scapegoated. They've decided white people are to blame, and therefore we must keep pushing this narrative so that no one looks at the reason why South Africa is failing. The corruption, the state capture, all of these things. They don't want anyone to look at that. And so they've scapegoated us. And I don't believe they're ever going to change that, because changing that would admitting they are the reason that the country has failed.
Alexander Bolger, thank you so much, and welcome to America.
Thank you very much.
Hey, Sean Hannity.
Wow, that was a really superb interview, man. I really enjoyed that interview so much. So, at the end of the day, my final thoughts. It's a complex country. South Africa is a really complex one. I remember when I started this channel, one of the first complaints I used to have for myself in trying to understand is the fact that, when the EFF speaks about my people, they seem to be speaking about some other people. When the MK speaks about our people, yes, our people is the word, our people, that we're going to do great things for our people. Sometimes when I hear that, it seems as though they're speaking to a different people. When Sten Houston speaks about how we're going to have to do great things for our people, it almost feels as though they're speaking to another set of people. So for me, this has actually been a point of confusion, how to really get a point where the whole land can start to see themselves as one. That's where I begin to now respect, President Mandela's role, although there's been many background arguments on whether he betrayed the country or not. And I told you guys, this biggest YouTuber in Africa, Wode Maya, actually, I think has actually even made another video, and that video said, did Mandela betray South Africa? All right, it has gotten, I don't know if it's maybe even up to 1 million views already. Most of the blacks in the Atlantic, in the Americas and all of that, really commenting and really, trying to really wonder how it is that Mandela might have betrayed, especially the black people. But one thing I would actually think, if I'm supposed to think about solution, because I really think that now we really have to start thinking about solutions for those South Africans who want to stay in South Africa, and for those who really would like to leave. There's really nothing holding you back from leaving, because I usually cite one of my favorite one of my most favorite academics, Felwine Sarr, who argues that, man must be able to move to where they find their most profound fecundity. So in other words, where you are most available to exercise your skills, your gifts, your talents, you should be able to find that place and exercise all that is in you before you depart from the surface of this earth. All right. So no crime. In fact, I think if there's going to be a masterclass in Africa on people who actually, seek a land where they can become the best they can ever be, one of those people actually might even be Nigerians, all right? Because Nigerians, I think South Africans might even be more patriotic than Nigerians. Nigerians don't have patience. Nigerians lack the patience for, in Igbo language, we'll say cho, cho, cho. It's kind of like they don't have the patience for this kind of things. They feel that they can do without government. And that's both a plus and a minus. It's a plus and a con. Because on the plus side, it speaks on the independence that every Nigerian you meet has. They believe that they can make it on their own in this world, and they don't really need a government to really determine if and how they can succeed. They believe that they can just get it, build their lives, build their destinies and they usually, at least I would argue, 80% success rate of many Nigerians you see across the board, really killing it in their profession, their careers and all that, without support from the government, without grants, without SASA. All right, we don't have those kind of things. So it's a plus on that side, but it's also a minus, because in the minus now, the government has come to really lack regard for the, cries of the citizens. So what the citizens actually complain about, the government believes that, well, these people can make it on their own, so we don't really have to worry so much. And so many laws they pass that really oppress the people, just as I say in South Africa now. The people just keep on taking it, and many have argued that Nigerians are one of the most resilient people in the world. In fact, there was a popular Nigerian musician, his name is Fela Anikulapo Kuti. He argued, there's a song, really interesting song, it's titled Suffering and Smiling. So that's Nigeria for you. Nigerians will suffer and smile because of this whole thing I've been talking about. But at the end of the day, this whole thing with historical redress for the past, I'm just really struggling, trying to see if maybe I'm thinking about the way I think, because I'm not in South Africa. I don't have a connection to the history of South Africa that would pull me down in that. But I have a connection to the history of Biafra. And I've read a lot about the pains that the Igbo people in Biafra went through, but yet they had to rise up. And so I'm thinking that if the blacks in South Africa as well could actually become a little bit more positive minded, and also if we can have the whites to really intentionally engage in training and probably a skills transfer to those who will be willing to learn. I know a lot of the blacks in South Africa now, I think I've been seeing a lot of your comments that many of them do not want to learn and all of that. I don't know how that works. I don't know really. But for the ones that really can, if there's a critical mass of empowered blacks, and that's why I was speaking to the likes of Ernst Rust, what he's trying to do with that lax libertas, that if there is a possibility where part of the willing black South Africans can be roped in and be empowered, because to alleviate these kinds of narratives, there has to be a critical mass of blacks who can actually come forward and say that they have been empowered by this and that, and you cannot do this to the white people. So there has to be a black agency. Without that, we cannot arrive at where we really see as a sustainable future for this kind of multiracial, multi-ethnic, multicultural society, because South Africa was designed to be the example of a global village. You see, so globalization, as we've been studying a lot in academia and all that, I don't know if Donald Trump now is now trying to put a pause to the drive, but we were really getting to the peak of globalization. We saw in Germany, in fact, in every city you got into Europe, there were mosques, there were churches, we saw globalization at its peak. I think South Africa was supposed to be there's a word they use in business now that is proof of concept. It makes me laugh to even say that. But anyway, South Africa was supposed to be proof of concept of what people who are put together can actually achieve, the greatness that can actually evolve, all right? And so, but because of the bitterness of the history that everyone in South Africa now shares, we're unable to reach that. And I just really think that it's really unfortunate that those that divide us seem to be more than those that, the voices that seek to unite us. And this would be my advice. If there's any Black South African listening, I don't know, many times the blacks do not have patience to listen to these kinds of channels, the likes of 360 Experience with Kebaso. I think Kebaso is his name, Thomas Kebaso, and the rest. But if you guys are really willing to listen, there has to be a willingness to cooperate. And also for the whites listening also, there has to be a willingness and an intentionality to start working together. What the best thing the whites in South Africa, the ones that are really highly skilled, can give to the blacks is skills. Education makes the difference. There has to be something has to just enter into that head to be able to stop thinking with emotions but start thinking with logic. This is something I've been complaining about on this channel, that even when a Black South African wants to comment on this channel, I can almost sniff emotions rather than a person speaking or thinking through, you know, with a willingness to really grapple things or discuss things logically. I'm really struggling, okay, to enter that space. And so we really need this. There needs to be an effort. I don't know if this effort will now be by the GNU, or because I don't even know if the ANC would ever have a majority again. Prince Mashele has been saying that the ANC, in fact, they might even fall below 25% thereabout. So I don't even know which party now would be able to get the 50+1 to become a majority again in the history of South Africa. I don't know the kind of miracle that would happen for the DA to have a 50+1, or the ANC to have a 50, or the EFF to, or the Patriotic Alliance. In my own mind, I just see these kinds of coalitions. So the GNU now must step forward to facilitate that kind of sort of like skills exchange, you know, so that at the end of the day we can have a populace of blacks, the majority, that are able to really critically articulate issues. And then you know, for me, for example, I wouldn't mind to have a training to set up a business, all right, from a really honest, intentional white person who is really skilled with business, and a willingness to also allow that leadership without the fear of the fact that, you know, I'm going to lose my job, I might lose my this or that. I think that's where South Africa needs to go to, and that's the problem. So there's a need for the kind of leadership that can facilitate this kind of exchange, and that's what I really see going forward. But I don't know, man, if those would be my thoughts, those would be my advice, and I will really keep trying my best to see how much we can continue educating. My own job here is to really bring issues to the fore and enlighten the people. Let's bring light, let's infuse a lot of light into this whole matter, so that at the end of the day, we see who's right, the wrongs, those who have been castigated as racist. If there was something intelligible that we might be able to learn amidst those castigations and all of that. But anyway, I'll be stopping here. I don't want this video to be so long. What do you guys think about this whole MBALULA speech about Gary Player and Johan Rupert, and the whole issue with slaughtering farmers? Do share your thoughts, guys. Share your thoughts in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one. Salute.